Well, good morning. I hope everybody is having a good morning from the comfort of their own homes. And before I dive into this morning's lesson, I really just wanted to touch base on the coronavirus situation and the impacts that it's having for us as a church and us as a community. Um, One of the things that I've seen amongst Christians is that in times of crisis, there's this profound sense of selfishness that can be displayed, and it's something that's so counterproductive to the gospel. But how convenient is it for us that we are here in the midst of a servanthood series, right? One of which we're a series about washing others' feet. And right now, that isn't the focus of culture. I mean, never has it really been the focus of culture, but especially right now in our world and in our community, um, it is not the focus of our culture. I can tell you that. And Jesus and the early church, they were not known for stockpiling food and toilet paper and hand sanitizer and spreading fear, right? Instead, they were known for their love, for their fire, for the gospel, for their service. So let's make sure that we pursue that. We try to model that the best that we can. That we wash our hands, but we wash feet at the same time. Now's a great time to be to serve others, right? In regards to West Vista's plans, we've seen some churches, shut down completely. We've seen some operate without any additional precautions, and so we decided that we should meet in this digital manner, something that we haven't done before. But we can, by doing so, we can prevent any possible spread, and so it can really be one less thing for you guys to worry about. Right now we're having to be very mindful of our time at the grocery store, mindful of our time at gas stations, at restaurants, at work. We're worried about catching it at all these places. We're trying to, be ultra conscious about all the surfaces we touch and touching our face and this, that, and the other. And so we hope that you can rest a little easier and really focus on the Lord during this time this morning, instead of focusing on not touching your face and focusing on when you wash your hands last, or focusing on who was that just coughed. So the good news is that it seems China's cases are peaking, which is very good, showing that there is this end in sight. But at the end of the day, through it all, not one single second of this virus was outside the will of God. Not a single patient was outside the will of God. None of this. At the end of the day, He is on the throne. He is ruling. And at the end of this short existence that we have here on Earth, there's an eternity that continues forever. And so everybody's panicking about catching the coronavirus, something that will ail us for 2 weeks, or if underlying conditions or whatever could cause death. But let's put the same type of concern and preparedness into our eternity, into others' eternities. Let's start putting that type of focus, that type of emphasis, that type of preparedness and research. Let's put that into the gospel that we're putting into the coronavirus. So that out of the way, let's get started on our lesson for this morning. Feel free to pause this video at any point so that you can find the scripture and read it. It is a lengthy section, so we're not going to read all of it. So what we're looking at this morning is Genesis 41, verses 1 through 40. So verses 1 through 7 are Pharaoh describing his dreams, right? He is having these wild dreams. They're parallel dreams. They're two separate dreams, but it's pretty similar as far as, just certain elements of it. And so he's describing his dream there in verses 1 through 7. If you want to read that, please go ahead, pause the video. Verse 8, Pharaoh gathers together the wise men and the magicians, and he asks them, what do these dreams mean? And they can't tell him, right? They don't know. So let's pick it up in verse 9. We're going to read verses 9 through 16 together. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I'm reminded of my shortcomings." Pharaoh was once again angry with his was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. So Joseph had been in prison for the last 2 years for something that he didn't do, right? He didn't even commit the crime. He was framed. That's an injustice. But God had a purpose in the delay. You know, he'd been sitting there for 2 years, but that purpose for that delay had now been explained. Like if you think about it, if God had wanted the cupbearer to remember Joseph and like, oh yeah, hey, whenever you were mad at me and you threw me in prison, there's this guy down there, this Hebrew, man, he can interpret dreams like it's nobody's business. He could have, that cupbearer could have remembered Joseph a year ago, a year and a half ago, a year and 11 months ago, but instead here we are 2 years later, and he's just now remembering him. But God moved in his perfect timing. I could imagine Joseph wondering where God was in those 2 years. You know, whenever there's silence, whenever there's, but Joseph didn't have an easy life. I mean, Joseph went from going from, just before prison, he was a slave, right? He was a slave, he was a prisoner, and now he's being asked to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. He's in front of Pharaoh. Pharaoh's asking him, what do these dreams mean? And it's finally this moment that this big plan of God is being revealed. But you know, this is also the point that we love to say, wow, look at me. Right? Wow, look at how good I am. Look at my accomplishments. You know, hey, I can interpret those dreams. I'm the best around. But instead, Joseph says, I can't do it. God will. And so he decides to give that credit and that honor and that glory to God. And so in verses 17 through 27, we're not going to read it. I'll summarize. Feel free to read it. Pharaoh retells his dreams, and Joseph interprets the dreams, right? He kind of really breaks down. So let's pick it up in verse 28. He kind of offers this little bit of the summary statement, and then he adds on this extra, and it's wonderful. So verse 28. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance of the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners of the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of those good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So wow, I mean, Joseph goes from slave to prisoner. I mean, he started this day as a prisoner. He started this day not knowing any of this was coming. He was probably starting this day, I can imagine, saying, it has been 2 long years. God, I know you have a plan, but Lord, reveal it. And that day, he was appointed over Egypt, greater than all the people in Egypt, with the exception of Pharaoh. Right? But see, Joseph showed his attitude of service in interpreting this dream, right? And not only just interpreting this dream, not just doing this thing for Pharaoh, but then providing this recommendation of how Pharaoh should handle this. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the president calling you and him saying, "Hey, look, what do you think this means?" And you say, "Well, hey, here's what I think it means, and here's how I think you should handle it," right? And he says, "Sounds great. You're in charge." Like that. That just doesn't happen. Not only just to us, to common people. No political blood in us, but especially to a prisoner, right? I mean, how bold of Joseph, right? He could have had this very timid spirit, but instead he knew that God would do what needed to be done. And see, so often we look for what's in it for us, right? Or if something, what can I get out of it? Or maybe they'll owe me, or something like that. Or even at work, that's not in my responsibilities. But imagine if Joseph had approached this same situation with that same attitude, where he goes before Pharaoh and he says, "Hey, you want me to do what? I'm a prisoner in your kingdom. Yeah, right, buddy. Forget this, okay?" Or if he had tried to negotiate his release prior to helping him, if he would have said, "Okay, hey, you know what? Maybe I will help you, but if I do, you're going to release me." I mean, Pharaoh could have said, "Nope, forget this, off with your head." Or he could have said, "Okay, fine, I'll release you, but that's it." Instead, he had this servant's heart, one that knows where his giftings from God are, and he wanted to bless others, to bless Pharaoh through it. I mean, he was just doing that for prisoners down in the prison before. Now he's doing it for Pharaoh. Now he's over Egypt, with the exception of Pharaoh. So in your workplace this week, in your family, with your kids, with your neighbors, how can you serve them? Through the giftings God has given you, how can you serve them? And we don't do it for our own attention. We don't do it just for somebody to say, "Wow, hey, you're really skilled at this. Thank you for doing that for me." Or, "Hey, wow, thank you for this blessing." It's not for us, and we don't do it in hopes of being owed one. We don't do it in hopes of getting a promotion, right? We do it because of what Jesus has said is the 2 greatest commandments: to love God and to love others, right? To love our neighbors. And this is the type of community that thrives in times of crisis, in times of toilet paper shortages. This is the type of community. So let's do our part to build that type of community, that biblical community where we are washing feet, right? So guys, I hope that you guys have a blessed week. Post your prayer request in the group me, and pray for the others as they post as well. We'll see you guys later.